All right, so Andy Dalton has signed. Cam Newton is still available. Some people were apoplectic about that development, but this is very, very simple to understand. First, Andy Dalton's healthy. Cam Newton isn't. Or, let me be more accurate, we don't know whether he's healthy, and there's no way that team doctors can find out whether or not he's healthy in the midst of a pandemic. Secondly, there's no way in hell Cam Newton is taking $3 million guaranteed and a max of $7 million. He ain't doing that, folks. And finally, he's not accepting the number 2 job behind Dak Prescott or anyone. He's going to be a starter if and when he returns. So this one is very simple to reconcile and understand, Chris. Cam Newton is a much better quarterback than Andy Dalton. Cam Newton has much higher earning potential than Andy Dalton. Cam Newton has a much greater likelihood of being a number 1 quarterback than Andy Dalton. There's just no one right now who is in a position where they can say, Cam, come be our starter. Because of that threshold problem, we have no way of determining that the foot is fine, the shoulder is fine, the ankle is fine, the player is fine.
No, I mean, you're right, Mike. And this is a subject we've talked about, quite often. And I understand people seeing it and going like, what in the hell is going on? Andy Dalton got signed before, Cam Newton. How can that be? Well, because in the NFL world, those two are looked at in a different stratosphere right now. And, yes, you mentioned all, the correct facts as far as why, also Andy Dalton got signed and Cam Newton being on the sideline still with the injury concern and no one be able to evaluate. But the big thing is, too, again, Cam Newton's a starting quarterback. Cam Newton, unlike Andy Dalton, would be a threat to any starting quarterback in football if they signed him. That's the biggest problem, and that's where it's going to be really strange. I mean, to sit here right now and try to peg a team with it for Cam Newton, it's just like, I have no idea where he ends up at this point. I don't. And it really does look like, unfortunately, he's going to have to sit there and wait to see if a quarterback gets hurt or something along those lines before he signs with the football team. But, again, Mike, like we've talked about a few times over the last few weeks, you bring Cam Newton into your football locker room and you go out to the practice field, and after a week of practice, I don't care who your starter is, unless it's Deshaun Watson or Mahomes or Rodgers or Lamar Jackson, every other quarterback in football, the team is going to walk off the field and go, man, Cam Newton is good. Maybe he should be our starter. And teams right now are trying to set the placemat for their season coming up and frame their team around their starting quarterbacks, not disrupt it and have the locker room divided as far as who should play. So, I mean, I don't know, Mike. This is crazy that we're talking about a guy like this and having no clue where he ends up.
Chris, we've already seen it in Jacksonville where Leonard Fournette got himself on the trade block for popping off about wanting Cam Newton to sign with the team. And Doug Marrone was on with Mike Tirico a few weeks ago. And Marrone, the coach of the Jaguars, said, hey, this is an issue these two guys are going to have to work out at some point, because Marrone understands how it can be perceived in the locker room when one of the players is openly campaigning for a Cam Newton. Another angle to this, and I remember late in Mike Vick's career, it was difficult for him to find landing spots, in part because every young player was in awe of him. Now, he wasn't as good in the latter few years of his career as he was earlier, but those guys wanted to play with him, and there was a built-in push to get him on the field because these guys who grew up idolizing Mike Vick wanted to play with him. And, we talk about whether or not Ben Roethlisberger would accept a big-name veteran quarterback behind him. He accepted Mike Vick, and that had to be difficult for that year or two that Vick was there because, Vick is a superstar, and Cam's the same way. There are going to be guys who grew up. Think about where we are right now. Think about how old the rookies were in 2011. They were in their early teens, if that old. They grew up idolizing Cam Newton. They're going to want to play with Cam Newton. And look, his best play, and there was a report this weekend from Joe Person of the Charlotte Observer. It looked like a report, and then he backed off of it. I don't know why he backed off, but it's pretty obvious. He said Cam Newton's not going to play with anyone as a backup. There's no way he's going to be a backup. Of course there's no way he's going to be backup. I guess it's not a report if it's obvious. He's not going to sign on to be someone's backup. What he does now, and his only choice at this point, is to wait for someone to get injured. And guys got injured last year, and I remember early in the year it felt like the sky was falling. There were so many quarterback injuries. Ben Roethlisberger was down in week 2. Drew Brees was down in week 2. We've got a graphic with all of the injuries. Look at all the games missed. Cam Newton himself was out in week 2. Nick Foles got injured week One, Joe Flacco had a neck injury halfway through the season. Matthew Stafford with a broken bone in his back. There were injuries galore. Now, the thing is, you don't want to sign with a team if it's a short-term thing. You want to wait for that season-ending Cam Newton, Ben Roethlisberger type injury that we saw early last year. And then you have to hope that the team, Chris, and this is the wild card. This is the wild card. Because how many times did we hear next man up when there were potential landing spots for a certain unemployed quarterback who shall remain nameless, right? Lest we rile up the Twitter mob. But teams could say, yeah, okay, Cam's out there, but he doesn't know our offense, right? We've got a number two, and that's why we have a number two, and we're going to just go with him. Now, it may look ridiculous to go with the number two over Cam Newton, but you can't rule that out because we've seen that time and again where teams just say, hey, next man up, let's put the backup in, even if the backup is a backup for a reason.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be the right circumstance of team that is going to dictate a little bit whether they would want to make a play for Cam Newton. You know, if it's a team that, okay, you know, is young, rebuilding, they want to see what they have as a football team and maybe their backup quarterback situation, or maybe it's a young quarterback who they think they have a future for who got hurt. Now Cam Newton's coming in. They might not want to disrupt that. But, you know, let's say, and I'm going to knock on wood because I'm certainly not wishing for any of this to happen, but what if Phillip Rivers gets hurt with the Indianapolis Colts? Something like that. You know, are they going to have probably going to stay with Jacoby Brissett? That's probably a bad example, okay? But I'm saying about it, well, my example would have been a team that views itself as, wow, we're a team that we think can make a playoff run this year. We're a playoff football team. And if one of those type of quarterbacks gets hurt early in the year, they might be the teams that are more inclined to sign a guy like Cam Newton to salvage that season. And again, like we've talked about so many times, when he walks into your locker room, every team thinks they're going to have a chance because, hey, he's been there, he's done that, and he's a special talent. We know that. So, you know, I think that's ultimately what it's going to come down to. Listen, if I was running the Jacksonville Jaguars and we get here a little farther down the COVID-19, you know, lifehood here, and we want to see, okay, let's finally get our hands and get a doctor on Cam Newton. Oh, he's healthy. I would seriously consider it. I would. You know, you might get a steal right now in a Cam Newton and getting him to a pretty affordable starting quarterback contract. And who knows? And you might get the chance that, okay, he's healthy, and all of a sudden you got your starting quarterback for the next 6 to 8 years. So they would be one team that jumps out to me. But other than that, I don't think any other one makes sense here anytime in the present future.
I'm just searching dictionary.com for the word lifehood. I've yet to get.
I knew that came out wrong.
Is that a Star Wars character? Is that number 4, Lifehood?
It is number 4. Yes, right.
But you know, you're right. These are all very good points, though, because at the end of the day, it's got to be something that Cam Newton thinks is right, and the planets may not line up. It's got to be a lineup. It's got to be right for him. It's got to be right for the team. It may not happen. Maybe, look, the guy's got over $120 million in career earnings in football. He's made some sponsorship money off the field. Maybe he just takes a year off and makes sure everyone realizes 2021, he's the top free agent quarterback available, and he's not even going to mess with potentially diminishing his reputation by jumping onto a moving train in October or November or September or whenever and having to get up to speed quickly. Maybe this is just kind of a strange asterisk year for him, and he just takes the year off. I don't know. He seems like a guy who wants to play. Gus Malzahn, his former offensive coordinator at Auburn, told Mike Tirico last week, I've seen that look in his eye before. Somebody's going to get a good quarterback, and it's going to take an injury to their current quarterback to make it happen. I think that's kind of where we are on this, Chris.
Yeah. That's a good question, though, Mike. I mean, it really is. You know, again, what if nothing comes to fruition? You know, what does Cam Newton do? Do you just sit out the year and wait for next year? I don't think that would be the right approach. You know, if I was in Cam Newton's camp, and I'm a huge Cam Newton fan, I think we both are, and you know that. And I at some point, if I felt like, ooh, the writing's on the wall here, we're getting a little too far into the season, and even if you do get signed by a team that has a starter go down and now you have to come and be the starter, it's going to be hard for you to have success and not know the playbook and come in week 7 or 8. At some point, I would think, you know, maybe you just sign with a team and become the backup. Maybe Sean McDermott does you a solid and brings you in there. And maybe if Josh Allen, who plays a little bit of a reckless style of football, you get to play, but nonetheless, you get to practice and get going back into the flow of football again, too. I wouldn't want to see Cam miss another year. They didn't get to really practice or do anything last year. And then if you went one more year, man, I'm just talking from my experience with me being out of football for a year and a half. The first time I got back in a preseason game, Mike, it was like the training wheels were back on. I felt like, oh my gosh, I felt like I hadn't played football in forever. It felt foreign to me. I did not feel comfortable out there. And I do think you have to worry about that, even when you're as talented as a Cam Newton.
The key, though, is this. You better have a pretty damn secure starting quarterback if Cam Newton walks through the door because, as Chris said, instantly you're going to have plenty of guys in the locker room looking at Cam Newton and saying, yeah, Cam Newton, he may be better than the guy we currently have on the roster, especially if he's healthy.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.